Tonight's big stories. The Philippines and Japan boost defense ties with the signing of a landmark agreement that paves the way for greater military cooperation. Japanese officials visiting Manila also pledged to help stimulate bilateral trade and investment.
A 10 million peso reward awaits anyone who could provide authorities information that will lead to the arrest of fugitive Pastor Apollo Quiboloy. We'll be speaking with Quiboloy's lawyer, attorney Ferdinand Topacio, about this later on.
And Senator Nancy Binay files an ethics complaint against Senator Alan Peter Cayetano over what she says was his unparliamentary behavior at the hearing on the new Senate building.
Good evening. Welcome to the show. I'm Regina Lay.
I'm Gretchen Ho.
And I'm Shawn Yao.
Well, it's the dawn of a new era for the Philippines and Japan, which have just signed a landmark defense pact called the Reciprocal Access Agreement.
As its name suggests, the pact gives both countries easier access to each other's bases and allows for larger and more complex joint military exercises.
On hand to sign the agreement were Japan's foreign and defense ministers, who also kicked off another round of the so-called 2+2 meetings here in Manila. Camille Samonte has the big story tonight.
The Philippines and Japan boosted their defense ties by signing a landmark reciprocal access agreement in Malacanang earlier today. The RRA allows Philippine and Japanese troops to enter each other's countries for larger and more complex joint military exercises, which may include live-fire drills. It allows for greater access to each other's bases. The defense pact was signed by Defense Secretary Gibo Teodoro and Japanese Foreign Minister Kamikawa Yoko. President Bongbong Marcos and Japan's Defense Minister Minoru Kihara were also there to witness the signing. Initial commitments on the RRA were made in 2022, but formal negotiations only kicked off November last year.
I'm glad that having witnessed the commencement, the beginnings of this agreement, that it has now come to fruition. Your presence here increases our confidence.
Thanks to the exceptional leadership by Mr. President and Prime Minister Kishida, our two nations has made great strides in defense cooperation and exchanges. I am committed to working with my good colleague, Secretary Teodoro, to further enhance our defense cooperation and exchanges in order to realize a free and open Indo-Pacific.
The RRA is akin to the Visiting Forces Agreement the Philippines has with the U.S. and in fact also opens the door for Japan to join the annual Balita drills not just as an observer. This is Japan's first RRA with an Asian country. Before today, it only had agreements with Australia, the UK, and the U.S. The pact also allows Japanese forces to be deployed here faster in times of natural disasters. After the ceremonial signing, Teodoro, Foreign Affairs Secretary Enrique Manalo, and their Japanese counterparts held their second 2+2 Defense and Foreign Affairs Ministerial meeting and discussed issues concerning the Indo-Pacific region and the West Philippine Sea.
We look forward to putting into flesh, so to speak, the steps forward now that we have upgraded our partnership one level higher by the signing of the Reciprocal Access Agreement. This is another milestone in our shared endeavor to ensure a rules-based international order, to ensure peace and stability in the Indo-Pacific and particularly in our region.
The relationship between Japan and the Philippines has seen great strides in the field of defense cooperation and exchanges, and I welcome the signature of the Japan-Philippines Reciprocal Access Agreement, which took place moments ago, representing the deepening cooperative relationship between our two nations.
Japan also hopes that the cooperation with the Philippines would extend to the economic side.
We would like to further deepen our bilateral relations in a wide range of areas, including economic, people-to-people exchanges, and cooperation in various international issues.
With the Philippine-Japan RA signed, it will now be submitted to the Philippine Senate and Japan's legislature for ratification. Senators, including Foreign Relations Panel Chairperson Ivy Marcos, welcomed the new defense deal. Although she said her committee will scrutinize every line and every word to make sure it is aligned with the national interests. Senate Committee on National Defense Chairperson Joga Estrada, on the other hand, says he will see to it that the ratification of the RAA will be prioritized once session opens later this month. Other countries said to be eyeing a similar defense pact with the Philippines include Canada, France, New Zealand, and India. For News 5, Camille Samonte, We Are One News.
But not everyone is happy about this pact with Japan, once a colonizer of the Philippines. In a statement, the Communist Party of the Philippines says it denounces the Reciprocal Access Agreement because, and I quote, in signing the RAA with Japan, the Marcos regime will further tie the country to the U.S.-led imperialist jingoist alliance and shackle the Philippines more firmly to the military and economic interests of the U.S. and Japan. It will further erode the country's capacity to independently assert its own interests and aspirations. It goes on to say, Marcos will pave the way for the return of the Philippines to the Philippines of the military forces of imperialist Japan, which has never fully acknowledged and rectified the crimes perpetrated by its soldiers who occupied the country in 1942 to 1945, including the rape of thousands of Filipino comfort women. Meanwhile, peasant rights group Tanggol Magsasaka said it also vehemently expressed its opposition to the RAA, citing the case of Jennifer Laude, the trans woman killed by a U.S. Marine. Tanggol said the murder of Jennifer Laude is not the only incident perpetrated by the U.S. troops. There had been reports of rape, murder, and other human rights violations against Filipinos that had been concealed or denied. No one was held accountable and justice was not served to the families of the victims. The statement goes on to say, the Philippines is not the playground for war games. The heavy presence of foreign troops and armaments in the country makes the Philippines vulnerable to potential military attacks by China. Ferdinand Marcos Jr. should be criticized for enabling foreign powers to exploit this issue and drag the Filipino people in their strategy against China.
Well, after the signing of the RAA, Foreign Affairs Secretary Enrique Manalo and his counterpart Yoko Kamikawa sat down for a working lunch to discuss other initiatives. In a readout provided by the Japanese embassy, Minister Kamikawa said Japan would further deepen security and maritime cooperation with the Philippines, including through the provision of coastal surveillance radar systems, the strengthening of coordination among coast guards, and the provision of additional patrol vessels. The two also talked about cooperating in the critical mineral supply chain, in particular for the semiconductor sector, as well as coordination on cybersecurity. Minister Kamikawa also expressed their intent to promote bilateral trade and investment and stated that Japan will continue to help the Philippines achieve upper middle income status. Earlier in the day, Minister Kamikawa and Defense Minister Minoru Kihara laid wreaths at the Rizal Monument at Rizal Park, which the Japanese ambassador to the Philippines described on X as paying respect to the enduring legacy of Dr. Jose Rizal. And the day before, July 7, Minister Kamikawa visited Nippon Human Resources Foundation, where she had a chance to speak with Filipino workers being dispatched to Japan. She also visited the site of the MRT Line 3, whose rehabilitation Japan funded through an ODA, or an official development assistance. The Japanese minister even took a 30-minute train ride from North Avenue to Ayala with her staff. Japan is funding a number of other infrastructure projects around the country. Well, joining us tonight to help us break down this landmark defense deal with Japan, we have with us via Zoom Joshua Espeña. He's the Vice President of the International Development and Security Cooperation, or IDSC. Joshua, good evening. Welcome to The Big Story.
Hello, Regina. Good evening. And also to Shawn Yao and Gretchen Ho.
Good evening.
All right. So lots to talk about with in terms of this RAA with Japan. Let's begin from a bird's eye view. Your overall impression, did it go far enough?
Okay. The recent signing of the so-called Reciprocal Access Agreement is arguably a critical upgrade for the Japan-Philippines security partnership. You have to take note that Japan's interests here in the Indo-Pacific is to, contain. We have to say this bluntly. It is to contain China's aggressive actions in the East China Sea, but also not just in the East China Sea, but also in the Taiwan Strait, as well as in the South China Sea. So we see here the critical enabler that is the logistical component of expanding its presence in the Indo-Pacific, insofar as trying to prevent whatever China is trying to do in expanding its military presence, not just military but also paramilitary presence in the East China Sea, South China Sea, and Taiwan Strait. So my overall impression here is that this is a good move, well thought by the Marcos administration. We understand that this one has been under the negotiation since last year. So it's really an important document. If you can see the timeline, it's very much short, right? So you can see the determination, if you will, of both sides to conclude this this agreement, insofar as trying to catch up with the lost capability of trying to deter future enemies of both countries. And now we have seen that since the 2010s, both countries have been late, trying to catch up with what China is trying to develop in the Indo-Pacific region. So while some people would try that this is a little bit too late in terms of trying to catch up vis-a-vis China, but my argument here is that yes, it is trying to keep up, but it's what that's what the point is all about, diba? So trying to counterbalance, right? So what we can see here is that at the diplomatic level, Manila, Tokyo, and Canberra, and also Washington would, as much as possible, try to prevent the line of escalation below the threshold
Joshua,
of conflict.
yeah.
But looking at this RAA, it is going to be a critical enabler for us to up the ante later on. So we may not see the fruition of this RAA right now, but it is a critical enabler for the future
Right.
operations of our armed forces and our foreign counterparts.
Right. Joshua, I want to point out here, though, that nowhere in the official documentation, nor in the officials' prepared speeches, was China mentioned. But you are convinced that this RAA was pulled together in reaction to China's ambitions?
Yes, I'd like to point that out as an analyst. While the documents, public documents, would, as much as possible, try to avoid some of the controversial tones in the agreement, but we have to understand that if you look at the national planning guidance of Japan since 2010, look closely at the national security strategy of Japan in 2013, followed by 2020. Defense white papers of 2021 and 2023, all these strategic documents indicate that China is a growing threat, a top one growing threat, not to mention that North Korea and also Russia are the next big two adversaries that it's trying to confront in its home islands from our north. So while we appreciate that Japan is trying to help us, capacitate the armed forces of the Philippines, the Philippine Coast Guard, we also have to understand that it is part of Japan's greater effort to, secure its strategic interests here in the Indo-Pacific region. So the top one being China here is because, Beijing has opportunity to expand their prosperity by threatening the sea lane of communications. We have seen these actions not just here in the South China Sea, but also in the Senkaku Islands, and then in the islands near Okinawa, which is the southwest territories of Japan. So Japan's efforts here is much wider than we can imagine. From a Filipino vantage point, we would just see that this is just a mere axis agreement, if you will. But if you look at the operational design of the Japanese self-defense forces, it is trying to connect linkages of the islands in the Indo-Pacific, or what we call as the first island chain. This refers to the set of islands from Okinawa down to the Taiwan and Luzon Straits, and to the West Philippine Sea Belt. This is a big, expansive horizon in the maritime domain. So Japan is trying to cover such a large expanse of water here, but we understand that there are also sensitivities because Japan has been an invader since the Second World War. But my argument is that Japan has splendidly recreated or reframed the international environment, whereas it's no longer impressed as a demon, if you will. But the bigger question is that will Japan will be the next guardian angel of the Indo-Pacific region?
Well, that's what I wanted to ask you, Joshua, because this RAA with Japan, you're right, it's a kind of like a micro view, right, of what is happening. But if you take a step back and look at the broader picture, there's so many agreements, reciprocal agreements happening, trilaterals, quadrilaterals. We have the Squad, we have Quad, we have AUKUS. How does this strengthen all of those other agreements? And will the Philippines stand to benefit kind of as a secondary result? Because of the RAA,
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. This is a critical question for the reason that if you look at the historical dimension or the trends for the past decades, the United States has toned down its presence in the Indo-Pacific because of, at the end of the Cold War, the Soviet threat was no more in the Indo-Pacific. And by 2001, you have the 9/11 strategic environment. All efforts were taken into the Middle East. So you have the military operational tempo transferring from the Indo-Pacific to the Middle East. Now China has perfectly exploited that strategic vacuum, if you will. Now you have Japan trying to catch up of what it later realized as as a downside of trying to focus in the Middle East. But of course, I'm just taking it from a 2020 hindsight. If you were the policymaker back then, it was vital because if we've seen the Japanese Maritime Self-Defense Forces, they have been contributing to the Persian Gulf security. Now things are going back in the Indo-Pacific. We need critical enablers. We need to sustain presence. We need to be everywhere as much as possible. When I say we need to be everywhere as much as possible, we're not just referring to Japan. We're also referring to Japan's partners. That is the US-led alliance network. Now, the United States is back in the Indo-Pacific region. It may be a large military. Yes, it is a large military, but the political attention was then in the Middle East. And in the 2010s, especially during the Trump administration, you have the reconcentration of some of the many forces here in the Indo-Pacific region, hence the change of the PACOM or the Pacific Command into Indo-Pacific Command. There you have an indication of a priority. Now, there's an intervening variable here right now. You have large swaths of conflicts all over the world. You have Israel. You have the war in Ukraine. So you have so many fronts out here right now that is threatening the US-led international order. So what Japan is trying to do is, number one, it's trying to fill up whatever capabilities it has been disparate vis-a-vis the United States. Second is it's trying to contribute to the order whereby the Indo-Pacific region is not necessarily welcoming to American presence. So if you would be seeing some of the surveys out there, for instance, the State of Southeast Asia survey, Japan remains the top one preferred partner in the region over the United States. So Japan trying to fill up some of the gaps provide a very good optics for strengthening the US-led alliance system. But what's missing here? Again, the idea of we have been disconnected for many decades now. Japan and the Philippines are not allies. Australia and the Philippines are not allies. Yet we are all allies of the United States. So the U.S. hubs and spokes system are being recascaded and being rehashed, and we're trying to experiment politically in order to provide the military deliverables required for the defense of our mutual interests. So at the last point is that where does the Philippines stand to gain here? It is stand to gain in trying to foster collective deterrence. We have to admit it. The Philippines cannot handle China alone. If we would argue the idea that we would just settle for a bilateral diplomatic arrangement with China, I have no problems with a diplomatic option. Only if under the condition that we're able to leverage from the position of strength. But again, the reality bites suggests that we cannot handle China alone. Hence, we have to rely on bigger defense networks. But the caveat here is that the Americans are not necessarily the only partner that we can rely on.
correct.
If you would be seeing the recent June 17 incident, it indicates so much that we not only rely on the United States, we have to rely on
Joshua?
bigger cards
Yeah.
out there.
Joshua,
So
I-
RLA is just one of the many steps on trying to diversify towards a more sophisticated collective deterrence initiative.
Joshua, I can sense you're very excited about this RAA. But as they say in diplomacy, everything means something. And I want to know your thoughts on Japan's posturing here. Because if you take a look at the signing, the signatory of Japan is not the defense minister. It is the foreign minister, Yoko Kamikawa. And for the Philippines, it is our defense secretary, Gibo Chodoro. And if you also take a look at the photo of them, it is the defense minister next to the foreign minister, next to PBBM, next to the defense secretary, next to the DFA secretary. So, para sa atin sa Pilipinas, defense ang frontline natin. Para sa kanila, it is their foreign ministry. I mean, just taking a look at that and analyzing that, what are your thoughts on what message Japan is sending?
Great observation, Gretchen. Because if you look at the picture, Japan, we have to understand there still are sensitivities with Japan's military posture in Southeast Asia. Hence, they need to package it well, and the foreign ministry is the best option here. Whereas in the Philippine side of things, we are trying to posture, as a small degree of bravado that we are not backing down. Now that this one is a package. If anything, this is a package of our continuing resolve of not yielding the 1 inch of territory to foreigners, as the president said a year ago. So this picture suggests it's not necessarily disconnection, but this is exactly the idea of a perfectly packaged picture sent to China. That for one, hey China, Japan is accepted here in the region. Second, hey China, the Philippines is not backing down. It's doubling down instead. It's upping the ante. So you have a good political package, and it's all about optics. Again, the Philippines, if you would observe at the ASEAN level, it has been, as I would argue, it has been de facto abandoned by its ASEAN counterparts. So trying to pitch in Japan in the picture, one of the most accepted player in the Indo-Pacific region, the Philippines sends a message that you have a legitimate player seeing our legitimate security needs.
Okay, but Joshua, talking about optics, still on that train of thought, how will China perceive this? So you're right, it's not the US, but the three of us here, including you and perhaps other Filipinos, can see that, Japan is proxying for the US. That might be a very simplistic way to put it, but that might be how more, normal people would perceive it.
No, but also the criticism against it
Yeah.
is that it might, in the end, serve nothing more than to inflame tensions even further.
Which is exactly my question. How do we expect China to respond to this? Do we expect them to respond as if we were inking a deal with the United States? Or do you expect a slightly different and more muted response, given that China, of course, has to take care of its optics for its own citizens as well?
Even though it technically wasn't named again in the paperwork.
Yes.
The short answer is that, of course, China won't be happy about this. What will make China happy is that the Philippines won't up the ante. It's gonna talk at the diplomatic table right here, right now, and accept the conditions as it is. That is to establish the fait accompli, as other experts and analysts say it about military affairs. Because for the past decades, since the 2010s, China has been proactive in its gray zone strategy. It has been able to, deny the sea lane of communication to the Philippines and establish sea control with its reclaimed features in the south in the West Philippine Sea. So there you have it. The idea here is that the Philippines doubling down will not be accepted. In fact, I'd like to point out the idea that these RAA selected sites will be, a default target for China. Of course, any military facility is by default a target of China, but it takes political will. It takes political will for China to up the ante as well. My argument is that China may not like this now, but it's not gonna be, irrational in trying to strike down these facilities anytime soon. We will be seeing a new kind strategic environment whereby sa wikang Filipino nagpapataasa ng ihi or hanggang yung isa ay masindak, no? So kung ikaw na lang ay mapipikon, wala tayong magagawa diyan kundi sumabak na lang. But of course, I'm just simplifying things here, But the bigger game here is to fostering collective deterrence. And you know what? Fostering collective deterrence doesn't take just years. It takes decades. So my argument is that perhaps it's gonna be a lifetime. If I'm gonna put it that way, no. So the RAA, if anything, is just a start of anything that we do. So anything that displeases China, unfortunately, it benefits Philippine strategic interest.
Yeah.
Of course, there are risks, and these risks are anything but accepted. If you want to defend your interests, of course, you will be by default a target of many states.
Right, but we will find out soon enough. I mean, the Chinese foreign ministry is pretty quick to respond to this. They hold almost daily pressers now, so we'll find out soon enough what they think of this. We're going to have to leave it there. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. International Development and Security Cooperation Vice President Joshua Espeña.
Still on the West Philippine Sea, around 2,000 retired military and police officers signed a manifesto calling for unity in the face of heightened tensions with China in the disputed waters. The former generals and uniformed officers gathered earlier today in Club Filipino in San Juan to express their support for the Marcos administration's efforts to counter China's aggressive actions in the West Philippine Sea. This call for unity comes on the heels of a text message blast last week calling for the resignation of Defense Secretary Gibo Teodoro, which blamed him for the bungled June 17 resupply mission to the Ayungin Shoal. While the former uniformed officials support the Philippines' current strategy, they noted that the government should focus on clarifying its rules of engagement when guarding and patrolling the disputed waters. They say that it should be clear how defense forces should act when dealing with Beijing's aggressiveness. They also say that the Philippines should continue to seek diplomatic solutions to ease tensions.
Kung tayo naman ay binubuli ng todo-todo, meron man tayong karapatan na i-depensa ating mga sarili. Halimbawa, kung nasa aking rubber boat ako at sila ay may mga palakol, sasakay sila sa akin, hindi pa pwede. Hindi pa pwede sa akin yun. Pero hindi ako magsisimula para kukunin kong baril ko, para babarinig ko. No way. So kinakailangan na i-maintain pa rin natin yung diplomacy na pinupurso ng ating government.
So mag-usap tayo sa tamang paraan. Umpisa pa lang dapat nakakaintindihan na. Ano ba yung iyo, ano ba yung amin? Sa amin, malinaw naman sinasabi sa UNCLOS. Hanggang dito may karapatan kami. 200 miles from our baselines.
At that same event, retired Marine Colonel and Medal of Valor awardee Ariel Querubin, who's also running for Senate next year, says that the government should also prioritize efforts to strengthen its defense forces. Querubin says that the Philippine military should have enough resources to defend the nation when needed.
Aminin natin, we are militarily weak. So, etong nangbubuli sa atin, ganun lang yung ginagawa, no? Pero dapat sana, sabi ko, may fast track natin yung ating Self-Reliance Defense Posture Program kasi dapat tayo, kaya natin manindigan na hindi tayo mag-rely ba sa mga kahit na sinong superpower. Sa ngayon kasi, wala tayong choice, kundi pag dinuli ka, maghanap ka rin isang big brother na nasasandalan mo.
Up next, here comes the bounty. A 10 million peso reward is being offered for information that would lead to the arrest of fugitive Apollo Quiboloy. That and more when the big story returns. Keep it here. Welcome back. You're still watching the big story here on One News.
The Interior Department is offering a 10 million peso reward to anyone who will provide information that will lead to the arrest of fugitive Apollo Quiboloy. The agency is also offering a 1 million pesos reward each for those who can provide information on the whereabouts of his 5 co-accused. Quiboloy and the other 5 are facing charges of human trafficking and child abuse and have been in hiding since February.
Si Pastor Quiboloy kasama si Crescente Canada, Pauline Canada, Ingrid Canada, Jacqueline Roy at Sylvia Semanes ay mga pugante. Sila ay pinag-ahanap ng mga otoridad dahil sila ay may warrant of arrest na in-issue ang isang korte. Ang kaso nila sa ating mga kababayan ay child abuse, bata, and exploitation, child abuse and exploitation, at qualified trafficking. Hindi ho biro ang kasong ito, kaya ito'y walang piyansa. Gusto ko hong i-anunsyo sa mga nanonood at nakikinig na meron tayong mga kaibigan na gustong tumulong sa paghanap sa kanila at nag-o-offer ng reward ng 10 million pesos for any information leading to the arrest of Pastor Quiboloy.
Let's get the reaction of Quiboloy's camp on that bit of news. We have with us on the show tonight, Attorney Ferdinand Topacio, Legal Counsel to Pastor Apollo Quiboloy. Magandang gabi, Attorney.
Yes, magandang po at magandang gabi sa lahat ng inyong nood sa inyong programa.
10 million pesos for information on the whereabouts of Pastor Apollo Quiboloy, 1 million pesos for others implicated in the case. I want to get your comments on that. And does the pastor have no plans to come forward still?
First of all, since it was admitted by Pastor Abalos that the reward money came from private persons, then he has nothing to do. Because usually, ako po ay galing din ako during the time of President Estrada. And the rule with respect to reward money is that there is a memorandum providing for the reward money for certain persons signed either by the Chief PNP or someone from the ILG, the Undersecretary for Peace and Order, or the Secretary himself. And usually, these funds come from the intelligence funds of the DILG. These are public funds. Now, there is a question that begs an answer from Secretary Abalos. Why are private funds being used to provide reward money for the arrest of Pastor Quiboloy? Bakit po pinatulan ito? Why am I asking this? Because the reason why intelligence funds, which are public funds, are used for reward money is to provide a better field in the implementation of arrest warrants. Kung papasukan po natin ng iba, then we have to know what is the arrest of these private persons in causing the arrest of Pastor Quiboloy. Why did the ILG private fund when there are guidelines when give public private funds to government? Is there a lack of intelligence funds? And the source of funds have to be under the law because we have to know the motivation for these people raising funds. So yung po ang number one dyan. Number two, the reward money is grossly disproportionate. It violates the equal protection cost. If we look at the recent reward monies being given to individuals, last May, 1.9 million, only 1.9 million was shared by 10 informants. And these 10 informants gave information that led to the arrest of persons accused of murder, rape, and even terrorism, members of the Terrorist New People's Army. Why is Pastor Quiboloy being given a bounty of 10 million when the crimes are practically the same as murder, rape, etc.? This is violative of the equal protection. As a pagkwento, ay dapat lahat ng charge with human trafficking, 10 milyon dapat. Lahat ng charge with rape, 10 milyon. Pag terrorism, dapat 1 milyon yan because terrorism yan, organized crime yan. So, it violates also the equal protection of the Constitution. Plus, it prejudices it creates an image in the mind of the people that is already the most guilty person in the country because it's a why is 10 million terrorists only get less than 1 million. Pantang was charged with multiple murder has a bounty of only 3 million. But 50 million din si Bantag. Bakit si Peta hindi 1 milyon? Dapat pantay-pantay. Ay hindi kaya itong kali that is running for the Senate. So we have to put these things into consideration.
Attorney, hi, you're coming in a bit choppy. I'm not sure if you can hear me well, but having said all of that, does that mean walang balak si Pastor Quiboloy na mag-surrender?
All of these things are immaterial. In fact, since there is such a huge amount, a discriminatory amount, on the part of the government for the arrest of Pastor Quiboloy, it only shows that there is political persecution. He's being singled out. So why would you surrender to a government that is persecutory, that is singling you out, that is discriminating against you? That is the problem with this government. Tira ng tira yung mga opisyal natin, hindi nakikita ang ramifications ng tinitingnan nila. This administration has become an administration that ignores the rule of law and tramples upon individual rights.
Let me respond to the 2 points you raised earlier. Number one, that the reward money is grossly disproportionate to his crimes. Let me just also remind everyone that Apollo Quiboloy is being accused with a long laundry list. It's been charged, not accused, been charged with a long laundry list of crimes, serious non-bailable offenses, including child abuse, sexual abuse, qualified trafficking, and exploitation. So I don't think there's an argument to...
So is Bantag. So is steroids that so many people, they're on par.
Right.
But there is even a member of the MILF that only had a bounty of 1.3 million pesos. So ang akin, gawin nilang 10 milyon, gawin nilang 100 milyon, gawin nilang 10 milyon lahat.
Attorney,
hindi pwedeng gano'n.
Right. I'm sure...
Nakakatawa itong gobyerno nito eh.
Right. But I'm also sure that you're well aware that the reward money is it's in their discretion, right? In much the same way that bail, the amount of bail that one can post is also in the discretion of the courts. The reward money is also in the discretion of the officials. So it's not our place to question it.
The discretion is not unfettered. In a Republican system of government, in a constitutional system of government, there is no such thing, unfettered, unlimited discretion. There are rules of equal protection. There are rules as to full disclosure on matters of public interest.
Right.
That is why I'm challenging Secretary Avalos, who are the people who are so interested in
which brings us
Pastor Quiboloy to neglect all other heinous crimes. There are so many heinous crimes. You mag-know na Israeli at saka yung duty free, bakit hindi 10 million din ang reward?
Oh, but let's...
Gawin na nilang 100 million, 500 million, 1 billion, pantay-pantay. Lahat 1 billion ang reward.
Attorney, let's not forget, he is on the Interpol list, right? He is wanted, one of the most wanted by the US FBI as well. So we're not talking about a small-time, small-time charges here. Right? We're talking about an international fugitive.
So you are saying that our government is subservient to the federal
No. There's no talking about subservience.
FBI is not even asking for his extradition.
No.
Wanted by the FBI, I cannot make a request for extradition. There is no such request for extradition. Hindi tayo nitong natin. At tawag wag tayong magpapadala. Isa ng estado na Amerika na.
Ito na lang, Attorney Topacio. Attorney Topacio?
There's no talk of any subservience here. What I'm just pointing out is the gravity of the charges that he's facing. Okay, so let's move on. So that's number one. That's your point. Wait. Let's move on. That's
last July lang.
Attorney. Let's move on.
1.3 million lang. That is what I'm trying to point out.
Right.
Yung 15 million. Okay. Granted. Very few crimes.
We understand your point, Attorney Topacio.
Lahat ng heinous crimes, 10 million na. Why not make it a billion?
We understand your point, Attorney, but a lot of people are saying, if he's confident na kaya niyang harapin yung mga kaso and he can refute and defend himself because yung burden naman talaga of proof lies with the accuser, ba't di na lang niya harapin sa korte? Total, that has not even happened yet. Are you not confident in the judicial system here in the Philippines na kayang masolusyonan?
in your case per se?
This judicial system is all screwed up. Alam niyo ba, ginawa nito yung judicial system dito? The Secretary of the DOJ refused to allow the recusation of the judge in the Balita case because they wanted to drop the ball in the Lima. Confirm yan. Si Undersecretary Jess Andres. So this is kind of justice system that we have in this country. It does not inspire evidence. The mere fact that there is a Pastor Quiboloy is proof that there is no level playing field insofar as our justice system is concerned. Napakarami.
I also just want to set the record straight with your first point. For those who don't know, you said that intelligence funds were being used to put up this reward money. We have no proof of that. We have no information on that, right?
No. Secretary Abdano, he himself admitted that this is that's what I'm saying. It should be public. Why are private individuals give to others? And why is Avalos for money? So yun ang isa pang problema dyan eh. Do you not think it's great that the government has funds allotted for reward money, but the secretary is accepting private funds? Who are these people who are so hell-bent on arresting Pastor Quiboloy? Magtataka eh. You in media should be more discerning. Right. Patanggap to private money. Hindi ba bawal yan?
But in any case, we'll look into that. But in any case, can we circle back to that very first question that Gretchen asked, which you hadn't answered, which is, does he have no plans to face this all the charges against him, to come out of hiding?
I said that the justice here is all stuff. I just gave you the example of the Lima, wherein an undersecretary of the DOJ the legal panel from asking for the recusation of the Lima case. Anong klaseng justice yan? People are being favored over the others. Di ba yung po natin ang gulo-gulo. At sinasabi nila, ito yung pogo, pero yung pointy nila, si Altenco, pinagtatanggol yung pogo. Kind of justice system that does not inspire confidence. Tapos, i-read nila yung compound ni Pastor Quiboloy. Parang war zone. Is this the kind of government that inspires confidence? No, of course not.
Bali, Attorney, linawin lang natin, walang balak si Pastor Quiboloy na humarap sa korte at harapin yung mga kaso na china-charge sa kanya dahil wala siyang kumpiyansa sa legal system. Tama po ba yung pagkakaintindi namin?
Yes, and we have been saying that time and again, actually. This is not the first time that I said that.
Pag nagbago po ang administrasyon, posible po bang magpakita si Pastor Apollo Quiboloy?
Well, we do not know. That is so far off in the future. What we are saying is, in the meantime, not only in the case of Pastor Quiboloy, in the case of Congressman Teves, there are so many things that have happened that does not inspire any confidence in the impartiality and lack of prejudice of our justice system.
Is a conditional, Attorney? Pwede pakilinaw lang din, is a conditional surrender also off the table? Meaning, meron po bang possible concessions na pwedeng ibigay kay Pastor Quiboloy para humarap siya at magpakita siya? Or is that absolutely off the table as well?
Well, my view there is no such thing as conditional surrender when you have a warrant. Either you surrender or you do not surrender. And alam nyo, this is not the first time that a person refused to surrender because of perceived injustice. Si Senator Ping Lacson, kung natatandaan nyo, hindi rin siya sumurrender. Tumakas din siya because he perceived that the government was not impartial. So this is not without precedent.
Let's not bring.
Make it appear that this is the first time that did happen in this country.
Let's not talk about other people's cases. Let's focus on this. Do you know where Quiboloy is right now?
Well, we cannot help but talk about other people's cases because the situation.
But do you know where he is
and for
at the
record,
moment?
I have no knowledge. I have no knowledge of where Pastor Quiboloy is right now.
Speaking of knowing his whereabouts, may plano ang PNP. They're looking into filing charges against former President Duterte on obstruction of justice because he claims to know where the pastor is. Ano pong response niyo po doon?
I think that would be a question that is more proper for the legal counsel of the former president, who I believe is a former presidential spokesman, Harry Roque. I would not want to venture on that because it would not be unethical to be second-guessing a fellow lawyer.
So you don't know his whereabouts, attorney, but when was the last time you had spoken to him?
That was, many months ago when I cannot recall exactly, but I might be able to trace it the last time that we spoke.
Okay.
We spoke personally when I went to Davao. It should be in my record somewhere.
So months ago?
Well, that was the time that there was a warrant out for him. I really can't recall, but I can trace it for you if you deem it important.
How are you able to represent him if you aren't able to counsel with him face to face?
The concept of legal representation is continuous. You do not have to talk to a person to continue to represent him. All that a lawyer needs to do is to try to protect the interest of his client the best way that he can, whether or not he talks to him. That is the concept of legal representation.
Okay.
That is a complex concept that we lawyers were taught in law school and which we practice up to now.
Okay. We have run out of time. We're going to have to leave that there. Thank you so much for your time tonight. Ferdinand Tapasio, legal counsel
I
to
appreciate it. Thank you for
Pastor
the time
Apollo
and the
Quiboloy.
opportunity. God bless.
In other news, Senator Nancy Binay has filed an ethics complaint against Senator Alan Peter Cayetano over their heated exchange in last week's inquiry on the new Senate building. Mayan Los Baños has the details.
Senator Nancy Binay went directly to the Senate Ethics Committee office this morning as she filed a complaint against fellow Senator Alan Peter Cayetano. Insults, humiliation, mockery, defamation, and abuse of position as chairman of the Senate Accounts Committee. These were some of the complaints of the senator, which stemmed from her exchange with Cayetano during the Accounts Committee hearing about the alleged 23 billion peso budget for the new Senate building in Taguig last week. In that hearing, Cayetano called Binay buang or crazy.
Kabuang ka na, day. Tapusin natin na maayos to. Senado to ng Pilipinas, hindi to palengke.
Cayetano also called Binay a marites or gossiper.
Sasabihin ko sa iyo, Lourdes ang pangalan mo, hindi Marites.
Binay says that what Cayetano did was slander, especially since the malicious statements were made in front of other senators and the public as they were in the middle of a public hearing. For Binay, it is clear that Cayetano's remarks were disrespectful and degrading to her.
Hindi ko talaga narinig yung tinawag niya akong buang nung nag-send na lang sila ng mga videos. Doon ka na lang nalaman na nung nakaalis pala ako, marami pa siyang mga sinabing masasakit.
Cayetano, on the other hand, said that Binay should not divert the issue.
Ito yung picture. Sabi ko, first time ko nakakita siya nag-file pero siya mukhang guilty, di ba?
Although Cayetano regrets their exchange during the hearing, he does not regret calling Binay a marites.
We started this investigation, this review, na wala tayong sinasabing may anomalya, wala tayong sinasabing may irregularity. Simple lang, 23 billion kasama yung sa lupa masyadong mahal. What did Senator Binay do? She started going around, nagmamamarites, nagkakalat ng kung ano-anong chismis, at kasama sa official chismis na kinakalat, is that mali yung numbers namin.
Senator Binay's complaint will be heard by Senator Francis Tolentino's Ethics Committee, which is set to convene once session resumes this month. But according to Cayetano, nothing will come out of Binay's complaint.
Ang ginagawa ni Senator Nancy from the start, nililito tayong lahat eh. Alam niya namang walang mangyayari dyan sa ethics case eh. Pwede ko rin siyang pailan ng ethics case eh. Dahil unethical din yung mga pinanggagawa niya. Hindi ka pwedeng biglang hindi ka member, bigla kang manggugulo doon. Nagsasalita pa chairman, gusto mong mauna ka, pinagbigyan ka na, tapos magwo-walk out ka.
Some of the possible punishments for those found violating Senate rules include censure or reprimand, suspension, and expulsion. The hearing on the new Senate building will resume this Wednesday. Senator Cayetano said that Senator Binay is welcome to attend even though she's no longer a member of the committee. Senator Binay said she'll only attend if she hears any incorrect data during the hearing. For News 5, Mean Los Baños, we are One News.
Just like that, we're almost out of time, but we have just a little bit left for our big picture tonight. This is a photo of an 88-year-old piece by the late national artist Fernando Amorsolo. Unfortunately, this painting was stolen from a museum in Silay, Negros Occidental. In a Facebook post by the Silay Heritage on Friday, Amorsolo's Mango Harvesters was reportedly stolen from the Jofilenya Museum. The Jofilenya Museum is a heritage house built in 1934 by the late Manuel Severino Jofilenya and Hilda Ledesma Hojilla. It houses a private collection of works from renowned Filipino artists such as Amorsolo, Juan Luna, and Felix Resurreccion Hidalgo, among others. The Silay City government is offering cash reward for information that would lead to the arrest of the suspects and the recovery of the painting. The Silay City Police said they now have 2 persons of interest who were seen on security footage of the museum. I saw this over the weekend.
It went viral on social media.
Because they opened up the house. The family opened up the house to share it with everyone. And then all of a sudden, painting just disappeared.
Was it an inside job?
There's so many questions,
right?
right?
One of the possibilities being raised, but
it could also be an outside job. I mean, you can freely access the house. Just go in as a tourist. And,
maybe they were quick about it. They grabbed it off the wall.
And put it in a bag.
It's installed against the wall quite
with
securely.
a lot of other paintings.
So it wouldn't have been easy to just pull it off like that, right?
I wonder how much that painting was, though.
I mean, the sad part is it's an Amorsolo. It's a national millions, but I think the sentimental value is what matters. The family.
10 million?
Well, you know what? If thieves can run off with paintings at the Louvre in Paris, for sure they can easily steal.
Or that painting in Boston where.
Yeah, and these are
highly
securitized museums, right? You'd have to go through a lot of security
I was actually
systems.
in the Gold Museum early today, in Ayala Museum. And
They
I was
take
wondering
something out?
about that.
No, just
if
kidding.
anybody tried to steal the gold, and they say they haven't heard of anybody trying.
Oh, that's good news, I suppose. Well, I hope they recover that painting.
Yeah, it's a national piece,
It's a national piece, and it means a lot to the family. But for tonight, that's all we have for you guys.
We are One News, all sides, all the time.
Thanks for tuning in. Have a good night.